guys? My name is Donovan. Welcome back to another Soup Theory podcast. This is my host, Devontae. Say what up, Devontae.
What's going on?
And today we are going to be discussing facing your fears. And I think that is something that is really important because fear is a myth, it is a myth, and it's something that we can overcome with just a little bit of effort. But first, we're going to do a quick Black Panther update. Real quick, it has shattered expectations and grossed around $704 million within 3 weekends of release. Okay, so let me put that in perspective. Justice League, what Black Panther made in its first weekend, it took Justice League a whole 91 days in its total box office run in theaters. So just let that sink in a little bit. Justice League, the most popular team up of superheroes, couldn't even come close to what Black Panther is doing right now in the box office. That is accounting for Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the most iconic superheroes of all time, let alone The Flash, Cyborg. We all know these characters from our childhood. And Black Panther is somebody that has not even been in the consciousness of the public in the entirety of this this superhero renaissance that we're going through right now. And that just goes to show you, when you put out a positive black image like that, people will come. It's the old saying, if you build it, they will come. So what is your perspective on this, man, and this amazing achievement that these amazing black directors and black actors have put out?
I mean, first of all, Negroes, way to go. No, I'm someone who I'm all about shaping my expectations. So I kind of set the bar low, to be completely honest, just because, well, I know that for a lot of people the dollar is tight. So, especially for an entire family to go out and make it a moment, I think it just says a lot about our ability to influence. I think when you break down the demographics of who was who really showed out, obviously, people of color really had a big part in that. So I'm very happy. hmm Yeah, same. And listen, here's the thing. The last episode that we cut, I recall myself saying that, what does this really mean for black people? And I said the real power is, who's behind the credits and who funded it, and who are the writers, and you know what, I found out later that there was a lot of diversity there. So that also made me very happy because for a change, you don't just have people someone's image being exploited and profited off of, but instead, you know, credit being given where it's due. I think it shows that there's a paradigm shift.
Happening in the public consciousness and right now, and that's what this podcast is all about, is trying to change the public consciousness. And yeah, man, fantastic. I'm so happy. I went to see it twice. One with all the homies, and I'm sure you've seen that picture. And then I went to see it with my good friend who happens to be white. And both times, I actually liked it even more the second time. Um, yeah, man, it was just it. I can't explain to you how happy I was to see beautiful black people in a positive image that weren't gangsters, that weren't struggling on the street, that weren't slaves, that weren't the token black friend, that weren't the sidekick, but they were the focus, and they were shown in blackness in all its excellence. And no matter how many people say, "Oh, it's just a movie," and "Why y'all acting like it's this? Why y'all acting like it's that?" and y'all don't support black business. Like, instead of paying attention to all that negativity, it's good to see that the majority of people saw it for what it was, which was representation of black people in a positive light on a blockbuster of this scale, which is definitely, it's like one of the top 10 fastest grossing movies of all time. And it just this third weekend box office is record setting in that it's the third highest grossing third weekend of all time behind I think Avatar and
Yeah, I have a thought, which is to me, it's interesting that success is then predicated on revenue. Um, I think it's interesting that even though how much money it earns is as a consequence of how great it is, I wonder if there are times that there's some misrepresentation of the quality or something, or just how culturally relevant it is, simply because it may have grossed a lot of money. Um, so I tried to kind of take an unbiased look at it and say yes, it is high grossing, and it was positioned to do really well. I mean, the trailer was fantastic when they first had made the announcement back last year, and I just think, and I think it even had a shorter lead time because I remember looking at the trailer for it sometime in like mid or late September. And at that point, I'm not sure how long the film had been announced, but just immediate sensational. It was just sensationalized from the beginning. So I think they positioned it well.
I'd like to counter that by just saying, if you, I follow the movie business a lot, and box office is basically the only thing you can predicate it off of success because you don't, outside of word of mouth, like everybody in your circle probably liked it, but um, what's what's really indicator of success is repeat business. If you're a good business and people like your product, they're to continue to come back if they had a good experience the first time. And so that's why box office is really the only thing that you can look at and say, okay, this actually had an impact. But I can see your side because there's a movie called Blade Runner 2049, which in my opinion is one of the best sci-fi films of all time, and it did extremely poorly at the box office. But like you said before, it did not have the positioning of Black Panther. The marketing was nowhere near on point like Black Panthers. And but like I said, um, the fact that it didn't have a drop off like the Last Jedi did, which had a record breaking drop off. It made like something like 200 and I don't know, 210 odd $1 million the first weekend, and then it dropped all the way down to 97 when Black Panther opened to 200, and the next weekend opened, the second weekend was like 103 or something. So yeah, box office is a really good indicator of a good product. So that's all I have to say about that, and I'm just I'm just very happy that we finally have something for little young black boys and little young black girls to look up to instead of always having to identify as the token or the sidekick or just look.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. Yeah, so I think in total, we have something that we can be proud of. It's a landmark for our culture to even look back on and reference and see how we're doing in the future. Um, and what I would like to see is for this to be the norm. I'm excited, but I'm saying, why, why it got to be, once in a blue moon, as they say, you know. So I think we've arrived to a better place when it's like when you kind of start to take for granted a little bit, like, oh shit, like this is the norm, inclusion. So we'll see, but definitely one for the team.
All right, so that's enough about the news. Let's hop into our topic of discussion today, which is facing your fears. And oh boy, this is something I struggle with. This is something I know Mr. Dante over here struggles with as well. And it's something overall that everybody struggles with. But here's the key about all of this. This is going to be my signature thing throughout this entire run of this podcast.
You're
So,
gonna die.
why does it even matter? When everything is going to be taken away anyway, why are you still holding on? Why are you still holding on to your ego? Why are you still holding on to your negative thought patterns? Why are you still holding on to your previous conditioning? I've been listening to this guy named Bob Proctor. He was one of the people that studied under Earl Nightingale, and he makes a very, very, very good point. His partner, John Canary, I have this quote right here. It says, anytime that you get feedback telling you why you can't do something, you must remember it is not a reflection of your potential or you as a person. I'm going to say that one more time so it can sink in. Anytime that you get feedback telling you why you can't do something, you must remember it is not a reflection of your potential or you as a person. So, what that basically means is when you tell yourself you can't do something, if you just take a step back and just look at that sentence in the whole, you realize it's just a sentence. But you as a person, you know if you have the correct motivation, the correct mindset, and the correct will to do something, you know you can do it. Because we are all put on this earth given the equal amount of time, or not, basically not equal amount of time, but equal amount of potential as a person. Because nobody is comes in with superpowers. This is not we don't live in the world of superheroes where some people inherently are better than other people. We all come out the womb naked and we're all given a certain amount of problems and a certain amount of potential. So, what are our fears? What are fears to you, Devontae? Let's define a fear.
Fear is a it's a biological feedback mechanism, just like any emotion. All emotions are feedback from your biology, and knowing this, a lot of our wiring, our biological feedback, is predicated on kind of the original human condition, which is needing to survive, needing to evolve, and ultimately uh, receiving information that's going to help you protect your family or your herd. And the thing is that now we live in very different times. For the most part, there are some people in the world who still have to worry about maybe going to sleep at night, someone might come and attack them. But for the most part, the things that we experience fear with on a daily basis are very base things, like having an altercation or a disagreement with your employer, or even something more trivial like allowing deciding where to go for your summer vacation to cause you fear or anxiety. It's like, yo, fear in a nutshell is an alarm going off in your head telling you that you're going to do something that requires more of you than usual. And that equates to discomfort. So I think that fear has an opponent, which is courage. So when I think about people who are successful, um, it's they've unlocked something quite different than what we imagine, which is the ability to act in spite of how they feel. Um, so in my own life, I've made a lot of decisions that to many stirred up feelings of uncertainty for them because that's how they would react in their situation. And they would say, aren't you scared? And I would say, absolutely. I'm fearful, but what I fear most is having regret. So I've allowed myself to be able to make decisions despite how I feel. And that same kind of virtue has led me to really admiring a lot of the examples we have from our past. When you look at ancient warriors, uh, they when they were acting in a righteous manner, almost always their actions were predicated on reason and rationale as opposed to how they felt. Because, things like sex before war, you would, lay down for your last intimacy with your wife or concubines, whatever they had in that time. And then knowing how bitter it is that they may not ever have that moment again, but still they allow themselves to fully enjoy that moment and then go into war knowing that they may not come back, but still being able to know that they can die with honor and enjoy that experience despite fear. So I think about that and I'm like, man, I'm very fortunate because in my life I don't have those kind of material battles, but I do have a lot of spiritual battles. And those going back to those things, like someone may tell you that you are not good enough, but being able to defeat your voices in your own head and say, I am worthy. I just need to grow and not feed into my own bullshit because it's all lies that we're telling ourselves. And a final thought I have about this, Donovan, is you mentioned the word programming or conditioning. A lot of our fears, a lot of the things we spend time fretting about are stuff that'll never happen. So, knowing this, uh, it's like the things that we think about every day over and over, it's usually stuff that we have been conditioned to think about. Things we heard when we were younger from our parents or whoever raised us, things we saw amongst our friends, and things that we experienced. So if someone, when they were 9 years old, attempted to climb Mount Everest, which I don't know why they would at that young age, but say they did and they failed, then as they got older, they may buy into the narrative that they can never climb Mount Everest again because they failed. So they have fear about conquering that.
And shout out to the parents that let their kids climb Mount Everest at 9 years
They,
old. Shout
they're
out to
out
them.
there. They're
They're the
out
real
there.
ones.
They're the real ones. So that's just an example to show that uh, you can't let your experiences define how you act in the future. And I struggle with this shit. So that's how I see fear.
Oh man, you hit on something really key here, which is the biology of fear. When we look at that side of the spectrum where it is the biology that is behind our fears, once again, we can step back and go beyond our simple biology. Instead of listening to the evolutionary patterns that have helped us survive throughout the years, that's why we're blessed with consciousness and we are blessed with intelligence. We can take a step back and look at our situation. We are not running from wolves. We are not fighting other tribes for resources. We are not trying to conquer other lands and other peoples. And these are all the instincts that were given to us so that we could do those things in a less in a primitive time. And these are the things that have been ingrained in us as human beings. But if you can go beyond that, you can unlock your true potential, because most of the times when we don't do the things that we want to do, it's based off of fear. It's based off of fear of failure, fear of not getting what we want, fear of looking stupid. But in reality, those fears are deep rooted in our biology that screams that we might be in danger. Our lives might be in peril. When there's, in all actuality, there's no actual threat that's coming towards us. These social problems that we have, it's really deep rooted. There's this guy named Julian Blanc. I really recommend you buy his program, Transformation Mastery. It has been a revelation towards me. And he goes into detail of how when you were a child, these fears were implanted in you. Because when you're a child, you have to obey the authorities. Because if you do not, there's a potential in your mind as a kid that they will leave you behind and you'll starve and you'll die and you'll die. So as a little kid, say you're in class and you say something that you think might be funny or think might be cool, but the entire class turns at you and laughs at you and starts making fun of you. So, as a little kid, your brain isn't developed enough to understand that that's just one single moment in time. You look at that as, oh, if I'm not a part of the group, I'm going to die as a little kid because you need to be a part of the group to survive because you don't have enough strength as your own, strength and experience as your own to survive as a little child. And you know this as a kid. You know this subconsciously. So you think, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this thing or that thing. If I do that thing, it equals death in my situation. So we internalize that and it gets seeped deep down into our subconscious and we act 90% from our subconscious. And so as an adult, these same things come up and you may be like, oh, you may have all these other excuses like, oh, I don't know that person. Why would I go up and talk to him? Oh, I shouldn't raise my voice. I shouldn't speak my mind because who wants to hear my opinion anyway? What really happens is you're acting from your fear as a child, that fear of death. And so once you become aware of something, you stop being a slave to that thing. Awareness is the key to everything because what you are aware of, you can change and you can control. But what you're unconscious of controls you. So, what we need to do as a people that are trying to become the greatest versions of ourselves, we need to go into our subconscious and bring up that trauma from our childhood and be aware of that trauma and be accepting of that trauma so we can go beyond that trauma and move on to greater and better pastures because being held back by your past is literally being held back by nothing because the
Nothing.
past doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is this moment right now that you're listening to this. The only time you have ever existed is right
It's right now.
now. So if you're being held back by something in the past, you're literally being held back by nothing. And what you have to do is realize that and become aware of that. And once you do that, you start to build momentum and you start to go beyond and accomplish things that you never thought you could do. And that I remember as a kid growing up, as an adolescent, as a teenager, I was not the popular kid. In fact, I was the least popular kid, if you want to go with that. And I had to come to terms with that and realize that that's not who I am. Those past traumatic experiences is not me as a person. I can choose whoever I want to be in this moment because it's my life. I'm going to die anyway. So why not live it in the way I want to? Why not be the king of my life and live my truth? And a king, he is centered, he is decisive, he lives with integrity, he protects his realm, he provides order, he creates and inspires creativity in others. He blesses the lives of others and he leaves a legacy. Why not live that truth and
Yes.
leave behind the fears that really do not exist? Fears, our fears are phantoms because once we walk through them, we realize that it was all in our head. And as the great Seneca says, that you said, we suffer more in thought than actual reality.
We suffer more in thought than we do reality. That's dope. Uh, you said some really key things that crystallized for me, and one of them has to do with intent. Uh, because you said that a king lives with integrity and also leads to leave a legacy. And in order to do that, you have to have intention. And I think that intention, what you intend to do, is shaped by your expectations. I think what you expect of yourself and what you've adjusted yourself to expect from the world, because your fears are predicated on what you are looking out for, the feedback that you're looking for. So if I am going to text my parent and ask for some money for some new shoes, and I'm holding my breath and I'm like, oh my goodness, they might say no. My fear is about the expectation of rejection. But if you expect that it can go any way, the answer that you get comes at much of a less price, less grief, less disappointment. So what I'm saying is, um, what we, the standard that we set through our expectations for ourselves and for the world is what drives our fears. But if you expect that the world can be unexpected, that things may not go your way, if you can embrace that you are going to die, if you can come to terms with the reality that sometimes you're not going to be as great as you think you are, I think then you can have more appreciation for all of the space in between, like those non-amazing moments where maybe your fears do come true. Maybe you do get told no. And I think if you can actually flip it, and instead of expecting, being eager to thrive off of any feedback, no matter what it is, you can live beyond fear, as you said, being able to go beyond the trauma. Uh, so hopefully that's not too convoluted, pivoting from intention to expectation, but I just see a bridge between those two and how they can drive, whether you're allow fear to stop you or whether you use that fear as your edge to go beyond it.
The mind can only hold one thought at a time. So instead of being negative, be positive. And what this is a quote from Earl Nightingale. What that basically means is we have this pattern of expecting things not to go our way, and that ends up happening.
Yeah.
However, we also have the potential to be positive about every situation and believe it's going to go our way, knowing that it may not always, but always having that kind of influence on yourself. And so instead of living based off of our fears, how about we just live based off of our truth?
Yeah,
Saying,
which is
oh,
way different.
I think this girl is gorgeous, and I think that I can go up to her and spit some game and make some shit happen.
Yeah.
So I am going to do that instead of thinking, wow, that girl is gorgeous. I'm scared. What is she going to think about me? I don't want to look stupid. So instead of having the latter mindset, how about just having that, oh, she's gorgeous. I'm a king. Let me invite her to my king. Me invite her to my kingdom. Instead of having the opposite mindset, just continue to have that one and live based off of that. Instead of living based off of fear, why not just live based off of what you want to do in life? Because it's going to yield you more results It's going to be leave your mind a lot of space for creativity, and it's just going to open up many opportunities for you that you weren't looking for in the first place because you were not aware that you were living based off of your fears.
Mm.
And now that you are aware of that, you can look out into the vast canvas of life and just see it for what it is,
Yes.
and just live from that. And
You know,
man, I tell you, once you have that mindset, stuff will start to come up and just hit you in the face and be like, wow, I wasn't even looking for that, but here it is. I'm glad I was aware of where I am right now. Let me try to take care of this, take this opportunity.
yeah. No, that's real, man. And, I mean, as we come to a close on overcoming fear, I think it's important to talk about practical ways of making that happen in their everyday life. And for me, it starts with recognizing that with everything that occurs to me, or that so-called happens, I have a choice on how I react. And in every moment, yeah, how I respond. In every moment, there's a choice to be made. And I think that how overcoming fear has to do with making the most of those split milliseconds in between something occurring and then you responding. Like, what do you do in that in between space? And I think if you recognize that that's where all the control is being able to decide that, oh, okay, I feel fear right now. I have an opportunity to behave different than I typically would, than I'm wired to do. And I think that's where you get your results from, is being able to moment, make a decision that you're not going to cave into fear or put any emotion in place of that, any non-supportive belief in place of that. And I think you can get some amazing results. So if you wake up in the morning and you're supposed to go to the gym and you're feeling fear because you're like, but I'm so far away from my goal, be able to say, hey, that's a thought. Thanks, but no thanks. How about there's something that I can appreciate about this small progress of being different today? And all of that compounds up to larger payoff. So I think that's good, can help.
Ahead, another one of my mentors, his saying, Dante Nero, his saying is, fear only exists between wanting to do that thing you want to do and actually taking action. So if you minimize the time between the thought and action, you can eliminate fear itself. So just going, taking action is the key to overcoming fear. It's just doing it. I like to keep it real. I turn that cold knob all the way on and leave the hot water all the way off. However, during these winter months, I think I got that virus because I was coming out of the shower and my thermal whatever the fuck you call it was not regulated right, and I would take the cold shower, go out into the cold, and I think it was breaking down my immune system, so I got really sick. So before I took the cold shower and then I turned the hot water on at the end just to warm up my body before going out in 20-degree weather. But I stopped doing that because out of habit, I just forgot about it. And then I think that's how I got sick. But this is only for the winter months. When in the summer, it's completely cold. Plus, it's in the summer, it's going to be hot anyway, so it's going to feel good, better. Yeah, yeah. But like, yeah, in the winter months, with the pipes as cold as they were, man, sometimes it would be so cold to the point it would actually be hurting my feet. But I still did it. I still got in the cold shower. Um, but yeah, so in the winter months, cold shower, last few seconds, heat your body up so you don't get sick like I was. And yeah, man, it's a great way to start off your day facing and doing the things that you know that you don't want to do. And yeah, man, minimize the time between the thoughts, the intention, and the action. If you close that gap, fear can't exist because it's all up in here anyway. And remember, the biology is just evolutionary. The things you feel inside is just your body telling you that you might die. It's just your past traumatic experience as a child, thinking that you might be left out of the group, thinking that you might be abandoned by your parents by not conforming to what they want you to be.
That's real.
Become aware of that, and you can go beyond fear and make it a habit of going beyond fear in your life. And next thing you know, you're just living in this floaty kind of state, just doing whatever the fuck you want. And that's where we all want to be. We all want to be that guy who's up on stage and be like, man, I can just tell that guy just does not give a fuck. That's why people gravitate to them. That's why girls gravitate to bad boys, because they feel that fearlessness of them not giving a fuck. And that's sexy. And that's being a king and living with decisiveness, integrity, and centered. Being centered in who you are.
Word.
So that's a dope ass episode. This is gonna be a hit. We went into some really good topics here. Shout out to Wakanda. Shout out to Devontae for bearing with me with the schedules and scheduling and all that other stuff. And shout out to you, you happy few that are listening and tuning into these. No matter if it's just 1 or 2 minutes, we appreciate you guys anyway. Once again, my name is Donovan. This has been the Soup Theory Podcast, episode 4. And yeah, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe and share this with all your other woke friends.
Even the sleep motherfuckers are, as Marlon Wayne says, the half woke niggas.
Half woke.
Even if they got crust in their eyes still.
Right.
All right. Well, yo, it's been real. Thank you. Greetings from Spain. All right.
Greetings from Cincy. Peace.